let's say you're Jeffrey, and he just shot a 160-pound doe, and she ended up being about 5.5 years old, whitetail. He could hang it for 7 days. Do you reckon that's how long he had? Then he butchered it in a cooler, in a controlled cooler at 40 degrees.
A little warm, but okay.
Yeah, it's just that's how it worked out. But is that what you? So let's say, I guess what's the ideal situation? Someone needs to know is like, if I can only hang my deer for 4 days, does it make a difference, or does it have to be 2 weeks? Does it have to be if I can do 2 days? Is that better? Is it, because a lot of people too is like we shot our moose in the field and we had to break it, we had to debone it to get it out. You know what I mean? It's like that's what we had to do. So I guess there's 2 questions then. 'Cause number one, first question is, talk to me about the aging process of a deer. What happens, day 1 to 4? Is there a point in doing it if we only got 2 days? Is it like every minute counts, or is it like if you can't hit 10 days, don't bother? And the second question is for people like us who got a moose, and you're like, hey man, I had to debone it in the field like an hour after I shot it. It barely got into rigor mortis. What am I looking at? What can that person do after the fact to try and help?
Okay. Whew. All right. So
yeah, it's 2 big different.
Strap yourself in.
Yeah.
So number one, the let's deal with short-term aging. So if you can only age a short period of time, you absolutely want to get the animal through rigor mortis, which can take 48 to 72 hours. So if you can hang the animal for 48 to 72 hours and then butcher, that's fine. The other thing is, if you're in the field and you don't have that opportunity, cut the animal into very large pieces. Like quartering it is pretty normal. And then if you can, and this is a reach and this is an ask, but
You're gonna say keep the bone attached.
You asked me about the ideal.
Yeah.
So the ideal would be to use a bone saw and cut the backstrap from the hips to the end of the backstrap over the ribs and keep it on the bone. That would be the ideal. Obviously it's hard to do if you're in the middle of nowhere. It's hard to do with the moose, but if you have like ye old whitetail in Michigan, that's a really good thing to do. And I'll tell you why. Because if you are going to age the animal, especially if you're going to actually dry age for 2 weeks or longer, by keeping everything on the bone, you have less meat exposed that later has to get trimmed off. So with the case of the backstrap, you've got the top of the ribs and the spine that are going to protect the backstrap while it ages. And then when you are done aging and you cut it off the bone, you have that very fresh cut there that's already dry aged. So you're in great shape. So your meat loss is going to be significantly lower if you're going to do that. Another point, and this is important, because space is often at an issue, the only things that really truly benefit from dry aging are those cuts that you then cook medium to medium rare. So that means backstrap and hind legs. And I'm not talking shanks. Shanks, shoulder, ribs, neck. None of that really truly benefits from dry aging. It's not going to hurt it, but why? Because you're going to slow cook those anyway. The entire point of dry aging is to tenderize and to increase flavor. So yeah, sure, you could dry age, like a fur on deer in 30 degrees, 31 degrees, and you'll be fine. I mean, go for it. But that's not everybody. So if you have to make choices, dry age those cuts that are going to get cooked medium rare.
Okay.
So
your
so
prime
you've got
cuts
the
basically.
1 or 2 days.
Your prime cuts basically.
Exactly. So you've got the 1 or 2 days to get it through rigor. Then you can go as long as you dare, depending on your conditions. And then if you have to make decisions, work with your prime cuts. Now, I want to, your situation. The other option, and this happens a lot, especially if you're in, if you're lucky or you're not in the backcountry or whatever, if you can get on that animal right when it dies and start butchering then, it has the awesomely named meat science term of hot boning, which my
Yeah.
inner 12-year-old always laughs at hot
Yeah. No.
boning.
No. I
Um,
get
but
it.
what it means is that you're cutting an animal before it gets into
Got it.
rigor.
It took
And
Ryan. It took
so,
Ryan a while to get it.
okay.
Yeah. And he's married.
um,
No, I'm just kidding.
oh, ow. That's painful.
So you
Anyway,
get on him before rigor mortis.
yes. So, and this is exceptionally important with the backstrap. So, because if I'm in the backcountry, there's just no way that you're going to be able to, stand there because there could be grizzly bears, and slowly butcher this animal out in the middle of a field or a forest or something. However, if you can get on that thing quick, get that backstrap off really quick, and then you can take your time because it doesn't matter if the hind legs or the forelegs go into rigor and then you butcher them 2 days later. They're on the bone. They're fine. But if you cut meat that's in rigor, you get what's called shortening. So if you can imagine holding your arm out and stiffening your arm, like lock your elbow, and then now imagine cutting your bicep right at the elbow. It's going to curl up like a Venetian blind. That same thing happens if that muscle is in rigor mortis. So there's a snapback, it's a shortening, and sometimes you can even see it. Usually you can't, but it happens. And what that does is that meat is then going to be tough forever. I mean, you can cook the hell out of it, but why do you want to cook the hell out of a backstrap?
Yeah.
So this happens a ton with wild pigs. Like people shoot wild pigs and like, why is that backstrap tender? Well, first of all, the pig was probably 6 years old. Second of all, you cut the pig when it was in rigor. And so your answer is if that
Shit.
happens, because it happens to the best of us, is make schnitzels and cutlets, Chinese food,
Yeah.
or chicken fried steak, or like something else where you manually tenderize the backstrap. So that's the answer to that problem. But that's an issue that happens a lot. And so what I do is I have historically hunted in warm places. So I'll get that backstrap off and the tenderloin, like right off the bat. I will quarter the animal and then just keep that on the bone for a couple, 2, 3 days in a cooler. I don't, another thing that drives me batty is when they bury things in ice water. Don't do that. That's
Okay.
a bad idea. Cold, yes. Wet, no.
Got it.
So you keep the quarters or the big chunks cold for as long as you can stand it, and then you do the fine work maybe when you get home, and you're always going to be in good shape, no matter if you can keep something cold and dry, you're always going to be fine. So I mean, sometimes it's the back of your truck if it's the conditions are right. But yeah, you have a lot of leeway in terms of getting good things out of your meat, provided you can either get on it immediately before it gets into rigor or let it get through rigor. And then kind of the icing on the cake is to actually dry age something for 2 weeks or more.
When do you know it's out of rigor?
It's usually 2 to 3 days. So I just, one way you can tell is if you can bend the joint of a leg.
Okay.
If you can't bend the joint of a leg, it's in rigor.
I see. I'll be the first to admit I was taught wrong then. I don't remember where I acquired this information, but I was told you wait at least until it's in rigor mortis because then at least the meat is pulling against the bone at that process.
That sounds like an efficiency thing.
No, yeah,
Yeah, no.
I did, but that's wrong. So if you're to get an animal, like just not I'm more or less reiterating for my personal self right now to make sure I understand because I'm trying to put all this in the memory bank right now. So you shoot something big, you're in a warm area or you're in the backcountry. First thing you do is before it gets to rigor mortis, get the backstrap out, get the tenderloin out, and then gut it. Everything else after that you can take your time.
Well, I mean, you could gut first, but I mean, be pretty quick.
Yeah, you only have so much time. I mean, they get in rigor mortis decently quick, and then once it's there,
Yes.
it sounds like you're in trouble. So get that out, So I would even say for a whitetail hunter in Michigan, then, if you're gonna just take your, if you're either gonna, a lot of people here take their deer in to be processed. I do not, but let's say you did. Then if you got your backstrap out right away, that might be the smart move.
Mm-hmm.
Like the second you got it, most people take their tenderloins out right away, anyways, because they know, that it gets, that for what they know they dry up and become nothing overnight pretty quick. If they're hanging, so, get those out before rigor mortis sets in. So when the animal's still loosey goosey or hot boning, as Ryan's going to learn about, but do that. Then as far as the hanging process goes, if you can, let's say you didn't find him until like Ryan's first deer. We found him a couple hours later, so he's in full riggy. So at that point, then the best case scenario for Ryan is probably still cut the tenderloins out, because they do seem relatively hidden from this process. Like it seems as though they've found their way away from the problem. Where
they have it, but they're so tender you barely notice.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just in my experience, that's what I say. So for the best case scenario then would be to hang it in either a cooler or outside in the cold weather as long as possible, with the fur on. And you're saying that 2 weeks would be fine.
If the fur on is it's got to be right around freezing to do it with the fur on. If it's above that, the fur is going to insulate enough, so you typically do it. You skin the deer and then hang it.
So skin the deer and then hang it would be better.
I mean, in most situations, there are opportunities where you can keep it fur on, but that insulates the meat quite a bit. And
let's say you're going to put it in. Let's say we have a refrigerator, a walk-in cooler up north, where we hang all the deer. And normally
is it 33 or 32,
yeah,
then you can hang it. Then you can do fur on, gut it, of course.
Yeah, so gut it, fur on, and leave it as long as you can. The last part of that question we were unpacking was, is 3 days, like if you only have 3 days, is obviously let's not use 3 days, because I know that's the other side of rigor mortis. The goal is to get on the other side of rigor mortis for sure. I know that.
Yes.
Is there a difference between day 4 and day 12 then? Where you might,
yes.
Okay, so
yes.
every day counts.
Ish. There's not a lot of difference between day 4 and day 8.
Okay.
It's once you get to about 10 days that people can taste a difference in a dry aged animal. And all of the tests done with beef and with venison in Europe, because you can buy venison in Europe, show that 10 days is where you start to really be able to pick up a dry aged flavor. 14 days, a lot of people really, really like it. 21 days is generally considered the prime. And then once you get past 21 days, you get into a whole different realm of kind of
possibly
funky, cheesy, which I happen to like, but it's going to be one of those deals where, you're going to
get a little sketchy.
And then the longer you dry age, the more tight your setup has to be. Like it really has to be proper humidity, proper temperature. And then, the longer you dry age, the more rind and the more waste you're going to have. So I dry age
because it becomes like a hardened shell.
Yes,
of dried
exactly.
out. Okay.
Yes. And then this is also the argument for keeping things on the bone, because when you take it off the bone, like everything that's exposed is going to get jumped.
Yeah.
It's going to look disgusting and blah blah blah, but underneath it will be amazing.
Okay. The amount of time, like let's say Jeffrey, he's got access to that cooler, 32, 33 degrees. It's just a standard walk-in cooler, not sure on the humidity. Somebody like that in that situation happens to have a walk-in cooler, happens to have the opportunity to hang it, but they probably don't like funky cheesy and they got to feed it to their wife and kids.
2 weeks.
Got it.
10 to 14 days.
Okay, 10 to 14. Okay. That's what I want to know. This was so much fun. This was so much fun.
We should do quarterly check-ins.
Just like
make sure we're not stupid with the meat.
Get your cell phone number and call you in a panic sometime. You know what's up. Hey, this
Well,
is
it wouldn't be the worst. Wouldn't be the worst text I've ever gotten. I will occasionally get text of, "I just ate this mushroom. Can you tell me what it is?"
Whoa.